Since the advent of COVID-19, pharmacists have served around the world, screening patients, referring them for treatment, and also managing their course of therapy. Around the world, there have been 12.4 million confirmed cases, with 6.83 million people recovered. In Nigeria alone, there have been 31,000 plus people confirmed positive and 709 deaths. Pharmacists and other healthcare workers, due to the nature of their work, interact with patients with highest risk and patients who may likely be ill, hence facing the highest risk in their population. Pharmacists are also concentrated in areas with high population density, hence they are in the midst of the epicenter when community transmission begins. With the high health workforce deficit in Nigeria, coupled with the distribution imbalances in favor of urban areas, it is not hard to imagine the damage to public health COVID-19 will cause if it impacts a small subsection of our pharmacy workforce. These risks are compounded by population hygiene, health-seeking behavior, and funding. The PSN, FIP, and WHO have released several practice advisories since the beginning of COVID-19. It is time to update these as new evidence begins to emerge, showing that peculiarities of workspaces may challenge known norms of infection prevention and control. Pharmacists practice in spaces with different specifications, from open clinical environments to contained aseptic areas, from free access premises to variable access units and offices. This webinar will address the risks inherent, more so what should happen when there is an exposure in the workplace. How should the risk be communicated to prevent a community panic? Our keynote is the distinguished infectious diseases consultant, Professor Adebola Olayinka. Our distinguished host is the PSN President, Maaze Sam Ohuabuwan, FPSN OFR. Our distinguished panelists include the Director of Food and Drugs, Federal Ministry of Health, Pharmacist Mashood Ulupu Lawal, FPSN. Also included the National Chairman of ACPN, Pharmacist Sam Adekola, FPSN, the National Chairman of AHAPIN, Dr. Kingsley Amibo, FPSN, the PSN Lagos Chairman, Pharmacist Iyola Gbolagade, FPSN, the PSN FCT Chairman, Pharmacist Jelili Kilani, FPSN, the DPS, Lagos State Ministry of Health, Dr. Moyosori Adejumo, FPSN, and FCT DPS HHSS, Pharmacist Boniface Iko. Don't miss this Zoom webinar. It is nothing like you have ever seen before. Join us. As men of honor, we join hands together. You're welcome to the PSN webinar. At this time, having heard the welcome note, we want to go to our president, pharmacist Mazi Sam Okwamboa, as he gives his address. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tosi. Very distinguished panelists on this webinar today. I can acknowledge my chairs, chair of ACPN, chair of AHAPN. I will acknowledge my director, the #1 pharmacist in the federal government in public sector, Pharmacist Lawal, my chair in Lagos, my dear DPS in Lagos and FCT and chair in Abuja, all those who are on this panel. Let me welcome all of you, fellows of society, fellows of the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists, and distinguished professionals. I'm always excited when new things happen. I am a man who thrives in change, in new things, in evolution. I'm intrigued when people use their heads and begin to find solutions to problems. And I'm so happy that during this period of COVID-19 and the associated lockdown and disruption in our businesses and in our profession, that a couple of pharmacists have come out with a lot of initiatives, not only to deal with the challenge of the COVID, initiatives related to producing products that can help us mitigate this. Many pharmacists have come up with ideas and suggestions, and we have been all over the country in very many states doing one thing or the other to support COVID-19 as a profession, as a society, and as a nation. So I want to thank God that He has protected all of us, even to this day, that we have not, we are alive. Of course, we know that some of our colleagues have been lost to this disease. The last time I checked with my chair of AHPN, Dr. Kingsley Amibo, there were about 5 or 6 pharmacists that had been affected in this matter. And just last week or so, or even this week, we had about another pharmacist, Mayday or so, who died in Ebonyi State. So if anybody doubted if pharmacists were at risk, I think there are clear evidence that we are every day working to bring succor, working to achieve our mandate as custodians of medicine, as experts in therapeutics. And therefore, this effort to try and update ourselves is useful. We know that at the beginning of this pandemic, I had the privilege to issue advisories. I think I've issued 2 advisories to pharmacists in the country. And at some point, I encouraged our chairs, hospital, academic, hospital and community, and I think industrial too, to issue further elaboration on those advisories and some practice notes. My belief is that we have been following those notes, those advisories, and that may have helped in reducing both mortality and morbidity that we have noticed in this pandemic. Some professional groups have perhaps been more exposed, be more vulnerable. Again, that may be to the fact that, by their own nature of practice, they could not protect themselves adequately, or just because it hadn't become a culture. But I think for us in pharmacy, it's a new thing for us. We have always related to our customers, to our clients, to our patients with actually no division. In fact, there used to be a time when there was a division, which was the window. But since the window was removed, We interact with our clients, especially those in hospital practice, face to face. Those who in community, they walk into our offices and we interact with them. We interact with them on the shop floor. And as the introduction was said, pharmacists are the front line. If you're looking for somebody called the front line, it's the pharmacist, because it's been proven that 70% or 75% of people seeking healthcare first go to their primary health provider. And in our circumstance, pharmacists represent that bulk. And of course, some of the space is filled by patent medicine vendors, both authorized and unauthorized. And therefore, it is reasonable for us to evaluate how far we have come. Have we kept those advisories? Is there some new development? Of course, knowledge about COVID-19 and the extent of its, pathogenic process and evolution is still being evaluated. We know that in some cases it's been very lethal. In other cases, the pathogenicity has not been as bad. The virulence has become variable in patients, patient groups, in sometimes cultural groups, but we do not know all the information. So I like to say that I am happy to be part of this. I'm happy that we have a very distinguished infectious disease specialist who will make the prime proposition on this panel. And we have the best cast of practitioners who look at these issues. My hope is that through this, we're going to develop some information, some documentation, some takeaway that will advise further advisories, that will advise further procedures. We have not seen the end of COVID-19. We don't know when it's going to end. We're not going to know the metamorphosis that will emerge. So you can call this a midterm review. Let's look at where we are, where we have come from, what we've accomplished, and then be able to make amends so that we shall be proud to say that the least number of healthcare professionals that were hot during this period were pharmacists. And because we're not competing to have more mortalities or more morbidities. So once again, let me thank Dr. Tosin for this initiative being pioneered by the Nigerian Journal of Pharmacy. And I believe there are many more initiatives to come from that office. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome and God bless you. You are not audible. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. So with this, we're going to start with the presentation from our keynote. Our keynote is Professor Adebola Olayinka, MBBS, FMC Path, and MPH. She's a current WHO research and infection prevention and control focal point and a consultant to the NCDC. You're welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. I think I lost the internet connection. Tosin, am I to start speaking now?
I think he has asked you to speak. Please go on.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, distinguished pharmacists. Thank you for the opportunity to share on infection prevention and control as to protecting the pharmacists at the front line. So I'm just going to give us a brief overview of the epidemic in Nigeria. I believe a lot of us are familiar with the figures already. Our confirmed cases are over 31,000, and our confirmed deaths with our case fatality rate is 2.3%. We have a male to female ratio of 2:1. The most affected age groups 31 to 40, and the age groups with the highest mortality 61 years and above. Now, I think one thing that will really be important to pharmacists is the exposure history. What we have currently in the country is 73% of cases not knowing how they got exposed. And that is relevant because it means that we have a lot of community transmission. And that means that as you conduct your daily work, your daily practices, as you move around, each one of us is at risk of exposure. We have over 12 million cases worldwide. A brief about coronavirus. Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses, and they cause a wide range of illness, from the common cold, and then you could have more severe diseases. We have classic examples in the Middle East respiratory syndrome and the acute respiratory syndrome. Both of them are zoonotic, and that means transmitted between animals and people. For SARS, it was found to be with civet cats and emerged from animals. And we have several known coronaviruses circulating in animals that have not yet infected humans. And COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus that causes COVID-19, is a novel coronavirus that had not previously been identified in humans until recently. When we talk about its transmission, the incubation period is 2 to 14 days, and it's mainly by human to human transmission. The disease has been found to be highly contagious. So we have a lot of transmissions occurring in households and nosocomial also during the delivery of health care. The risk of death is higher in elderly people with underlying medical conditions. For those who are younger, the disease is usually much milder. Now, in terms of modes of transmission, dissemination by air, it could be by droplet sprays, and of course, there's the possibility of aerosol transmission, but they are both disseminated in the air. And then we have contact, which could be direct or indirect. I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about transmission, because when we understand the mode of transmission, then we'll be able to protect ourselves adequately. Whether it's droplets or whether it's airborne, the prevention methods are a bit similar on many counts. So we have human-to-human transfer that occurs from inhalation. So droplets could be inhaled, aerosols could be inhaled. But it's important to understand that whether they're droplets or they're aerosols, they are expelled from the respiratory tract of people who have symptoms or people who are infected. The other one is by contact with patients' respiratory secretions. Either you're touching a person and then you touch your face or your mucous membranes. So it's from the hands to the mucosa through contact with faces. And this means that it's not through the skin, but we put a lot of emphasis on touch because your hands touch your face about 25 times in 1 hour. So how do people who are infected transmit it to others? This is done through a number of activities. One could be by coughing or by sneezing or by talking or by singing or even by breathing. So once people are infected, once they breathe, they're breathing out a few particles. If they talk, they bring out much more particles. If they cough or sneeze, they're bringing them in thousands or millions. And so this tells us how the disease gets transmitted from one person to so many others. There are conditions that facilitate the spread and impact of the disease. We've got environmental conditions like overcrowding, enclosed spaces, inadequate ventilation, poor hygiene, contaminated surfaces. Poor medical care and poor infection prevention and control also facilitates the spread of the disease. Then host factors, this affect the impact of the disease. People of older age, people who smoke, people with poor immune and nutritional status or underlying medical conditions like hypertension, any cardiac disease or diabetes. And then the pathogenic characteristics of the infectious agent, the virus itself, also matters. How large is the inoculum size? How large is the load? For example, somebody who sneezes brings up much more than somebody who talks very quietly. And so those are some of the things that facilitate spread and impact. So what are some of the prevention methods to limit or curb the spread of this virus? Everybody needs to understand respiratory hygiene and cough etiquette. And I'm going into some details about this because I know that as pharmacists, you provide education to the community. So it's important that people understand respiratory hygiene and cough etiquette. And this means covering cough or sneeze, either coughing into the elbow flexure or collecting the secretions with a disposable tissue, disposing in waste containers, and cleaning the hands thereafter. We do not encourage the use of handkerchiefs because handkerchiefs get reused. They get put into the pockets, the keys get into the same pockets, the phone gets into the same pocket, money gets into the same pocket. And so a handkerchief actually becomes a vehicle for transmission. So the emphasis is on disposable tissue. And for people who have acute respiratory symptoms, they need to be seated away from others in common waiting areas. And we talk of ideally 2 meters or more from other people. Or they could sit outside and not be within an enclosure. So when someone has a cough or a cold, what are the things that are expected? These are the same things, but only bringing them up in pictorial form. Covering of mouth is not into the fist or into the open palm. It has to be into the elbow flexure. It has to be with the use of a disposable tissue and not a handkerchief. I've seen people wearing masks in different ways because when people are positive, even their breathing can bring out particles. Masks need to cover both the nose and the mouth and not just the mouth alone. I've also seen people, there's been a lot on the internet about wearing masks in different ways, white side out, green colored side outwards. There's only one proper way to wear the mask, and that is the colored side outwards and the white side against the face for those masks that have 2 colors. Then hand hygiene is also critical because our hands are a key link in the chain of transmission. So hand hygiene can be performed either by using an alcohol-based hand rub or by washing with a hand wash under running water. And it's been found that hand hygiene is a very effective way to reduce the risk of spread and of acquiring transmission. Now let's take a closer look at the frontline pharmacists and what are the potential risks. These are some of the pharmaceutical care that pharmacists provide, particularly in the community. And a lot of your care and your duties they need an interaction with your client or with the patient. Depending on your service range, you do a lot of educational consultations, you do prescription verifications, you're doing chronic conditions management, acute care management, health and wellness services, and all of these bring you in close interaction with the people you serve. And it means that any one of these people could be a potential positive case of COVID-19. So how do you protect yourself in delivering this care? There are quite a number of things to consider. You want to consider the infrastructure in which you work. You want to consider what resources are available to you. And then you also want to understand, you want your staff to understand the conditions you're working in, and also your clients, the condition you're working in. So there are WHO strategies that have been in use since this started, and they've always been in use anyway for most infections, that help us to limit the spread and transmission of infection. And these strategies include the ability to be able to screen and recognize early someone with a potential contagious disorder. The other strategy is the implementation of what we call standard precautions and additional transmission-based precautions as appropriate, depending on the procedures to be performed. Then we've got what we call administrative controls, engineering controls, and environmental controls. And we use a combination of these in infection prevention and control. When we talk of administrative controls, for example, we are talking about those processes you put in place, the policies, the processes, the procedures that you put in place to make the environment safe for both your staff and your clients. When we talk about engineering controls, we're talking about things that can be fabricated, things that have been engineered and which help to make the environment safe. And I have an example coming on later. Then environmental controls, these refer to things like how do we improve the ventilation? How do we clean? How do we make sure the surfaces, frequently touched surfaces, are disinfected? And then standard precautions are things like hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, the use of masks, and so on and so forth. So we need a combination of all these strategies combined to have an effective infection prevention and control strategy to limit transmission of infection. Now, because you are people who work at the front line and you need to have to understand how to screen people who may be potentially infected. Here I'm sharing the current suspected case definition by the NCDC, and it says that any person with a cough and or fever, or who has had a history of fever, the person may not be febrile currently, but the person has had a history of fever in the last 2 weeks, and who has one or more of these symptoms. So could have shivering or shaking or chills, body pains, headaches, sore throat, recent loss of smell or recent loss of taste, difficulty in breathing, shortness of breath, runny nose, catarrh, diarrhea, abdominal pain, fatigue, tiredness. Actually, if you look at these symptoms, it could fit into anything. It could be just an upper respiratory tract infection, it could be malaria, it could be the beginning of a typhoid, and of course, it could also be COVID. I think the only one that distinguishes all the others for now is the recent loss of smell or taste. But then it's not everybody that has a recent loss of smell. So it's not something you will find in everyone. And a confirmed case is any person with a laboratory confirmation of COVID-19, irrespective of clinical signs and symptoms. So what are those infection prevention and control measures that as pharmacists you can put in place? One, you are going to need to develop policies and standard operating procedures that address the safety of your clients and the safety of your staff. You need to consider how can we put in place appropriate distancing measures? How do we encourage respiratory hygiene? Could that be like putting a box of tissue at reach for anybody and a waste bin where they can drop it immediately? hand hygiene equipment, and even for your staff, is there a way of scheduling that they're performing hand hygiene frequently? Scheduled cleaning and decontamination of the environment, especially the frequently touched surfaces, every 2 hours, every 3 hours, depending on the crowd you have in your premises. Scheduled cleaning and disinfection of common use items. How do you improve ventilation? And ventilation is particularly important, especially now that we're talking about the possibility of airborne transmission. It's also important that your staff understand how the disease is transmitted so that everybody takes the same precaution. Then how do you protect vulnerable persons? Remember that you have vulnerable persons amidst both your staff and amidst your clients, and they both need to be protected. Then what if you now have somebody that you think could be a suspect case? What will be the referral process? What are the collaborations that you have to refer such a person appropriately? So these are some pictures on some of the protective measures. We talk about distancing, sneezing or coughing into your elbow, distancing even in attending to clients, hand washing, and then disinfecting frequently touch surfaces like the door handle or like the sliding door handle, depending on what you have on your premises. Then this is an engineering control that I think is really relevant when you talk about pharmacy practice, and that's the use of a plexiglass as a physical barrier. So whether you're doing an education or a counseling session, or you're dispensing, or you're attending to a client in whatever means, if you can have a physical barrier, it actually helps because then it gives considerable protection. Use of signages on the premises are also important because they serve as reminders to both the staff and also to the clients. So in summary, there are quite a number of things that can be done, but I don't want to give a very long talk. The use of masks is important, and both staff and clients should be encouraged to do the same and to use the mask appropriately, covering both nose and mouth, not just the mouth, and not hanging it under the chin or around the neck, as is so common. And there's no need to wear gloves all over the place because when people wear gloves, then they don't practice hand hygiene. So it's better to schedule hand hygiene as frequently as possible. Everybody needs to be educated on respiratory hygiene. And as you perform your counseling sessions, please educate people on respiratory hygiene. The more people we have practicing respiratory hygiene, the safer it is for us all. Let's use as much information, education, communication materials as possible in our premises. Let's utilize the case definition for screening. Let's ensure that there's adequate spatial distancing and good ventilation. And let's pay attention to environmental hygiene and make provisions for waste management, especially if you're educating people on respiratory hygiene. And so hand hygiene, there are so many periods when we need to perform hand hygiene. And these are things that our staff need to know. These are things we should also educate our clients on times when it's important to clean hands. But particularly in the context of COVID, after blowing the nose, coughing or sneezing, the hand hygiene needs to be performed. And when hands are visibly soiled, then you want to wash with soap under running water and not just use alcohol-based hand rub. So the key messages are to know and understand what the preventive measures are, to keep the physical distance, to practice hand and respiratory hygiene, to avoid touching our faces with unclean hands, and also ensuring that our environment is clean. And if in the course of performing your duties or providing services, you feel you have been exposed, please don't run around, don't do self-medication, follow the protocol, call the hotline of the state where you are. And if you're using PPE, use them appropriately and also dispose of them appropriately. So thank you, and over.
Thank you very much. We sincerely appreciate your presentation. Thanks for these wonderful contributions. So going forward, we're going to entertain a few questions before we go on to the panel session. The first question is from Professor Chinedum Babalola. And she asks, with respect to ventilation, should community pharmacies and even hospital pharmacies, should they use air conditioners? We currently use air conditioners to ensure that the temperature in the room is adequate to ensure the quality of medicines. So what do you advise?
This question has been one that has been recurrent, and we understand the need for temperature control, but we also understand the need for adequate ventilation. So like I just traveled from Katsina to Kebbi this evening, or the whole day actually, not this evening. I started at 8, I got to Kebbi like 5 p.m. And I used an air-conditioned car, but my phone is set that every 30 minutes I wind down because although the driver uses a mask, I use a mask, but both of us, we've been all over the place. So we do a protection. So every 30 minutes we wind down to get what we call a good air exchange. We just want to change the air within the closed up environment. So this I have advised to quite a number of people. Yes, you have your ACs, but once in a while, let some fresh air come in so that in case somebody has coughed or has released some viral particles indoors, rather than recirculating the viral particles over and over, you get in some fresh air from time to time. So there must be a way of getting in some fresh air from time to time and changing the air within the room.
Ma, thank you. We'll go on to the next question. Dr. Ariola Joda asks, what is the appropriate referral process for a suspected case when identified in the pharmacy?
Okay, so almost every state in the country has a state hotline that is linked to either the state epidemiologist or the DSNO, the Disease Surveillance and Notification Officer. If you don't have that, you have the NCDC hotline. So the best referral will be that, okay, you may have this, because the only way you can conclude whether somebody has it or not is by testing. And so using these hotlines, they will send the person to the appropriate place where testing happens. In many states, sample collection is happening in different places, but these hotlines can either, based on the person's location, direct the person to the nearest sample collection center. Over.
All right. Thank you very much, Ma. Ibukunoluwa Oyebade wants to further confirm on the issue of ventilation. Is it advisable to turn on the ceiling fan?
If you're going to turn on the ceiling fan, you must open your windows.
So
if you're putting on the ceiling fan, you must open the windows because you want it out. You don't just want it all over the place. So if you're putting on the fan, then your doors, windows are open, and then you get that out.
Okay.
But then if you have somebody who is actively coughing or sneezing, you don't want the fan on.
Oh, great. Okay. And also there is another question. There are complaints about the hotlines not being picked when pharmacists or other patients call. What would you advise as the next step if that is not attended to?
Okay, well, this varies from place to place, but I think the only thing is also to understand where the screening centers are located within your community. So if you have an idea where the screening centers are located, then the person can just walk in there. I remember 3 days ago, somebody called me in Abuja and said, look, I think I had fever 3 days ago. I treated malaria well, and then I started coughing. And I said, okay, you need to go screen. And I know that the screening center in Abuja is at the ICC. So I was like, you know what, just drive down to the ICC. So if you know where the screening center is located, you can just refer the person to that address, and then the person can be screened and all the documentations and samples can be taken from there. Over.
Thank you, Ma. One last question. We are really out of time. Thanks so much for being with us. We're grateful. The last question, on the explanation for engineering control, is glass barrier the only engineering barrier available?
Okay, so even when I say plexiglass, it's not really glass. It could be fiberglass. It could be like this hard plastic. So it's not glass per se. But of course, if you look at it, somebody is facing you directly. I expect that if you're in your premises, you should be wearing a mask because you know you are exposed as people come in. But you know, some of the people who come in may not be using a mask. And of course, by the time they're coming to see you, it means that they are ill. Or well, sometimes some are not ill. Maybe they need multivitamins, but some of them are ill. And that's why they're coming to visit you. So having a barrier between you and them, even when they are expelling it, it's not getting to you, even when you're attending to them. And so that's why that physical barrier really works. Of course, if you don't have the physical barrier, then you have to find a way of increasing the distance. The good thing is in pharmacies, you already have something that helps you to put some distance between you and your clients, but then you may want to stand a bit, not so close behind it, maybe a bit further. But you know, also because some of the clients, they don't want to announce what they came for to everybody by, if you're standing 2 meters apart from somebody, by the time you're talking, everybody knows what you've come to ask. So that's why the use of that physical barrier could also still provide a bit of confidentiality, but then it protects the person that is attending to them.
Great. Thanks so much, Ma. One of the highlights of this for me has been your emphasis on the behavior of the healthcare worker himself or herself, because a number of us may forget sometimes while actively practicing to put on our face masks, or sometimes even accidentally touch our face. So it was a real good one. Thanks so much, Ma. We sincerely appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now we will move on to, we'll do a brief announcement, and then we will move on to the panelist session. Omoluabi 2020. Registration for Omoluabi 2020 has started, and we want to see, I'm sure a question has appeared on your screen. If you have registered, let's see your answer. Click yes. If you have not registered, click no. We're waiting for your response. Wow. This is surprising. Almost 100% of us have not registered, and a large number are saying that they are not aware. Okay, so very quickly, I will show you what to do for registration. Once you are online, please go to the website PSN National. Just a minute. Okay, so once you're online, please go to the PSN website. It's the first banner on the upper left. You can scroll to the page using your phone or using your laptops. Okay, and once you're there, just click on register now. Once you click on register now, it brings up this page. And once you're here, click here, click to register. Once you click on that link, you will be taken to this page where you enter in your details. Very easy. Your first name, your last name, your PCN registration license number, your state of practice, your place of work, workplace and address, state of origin, your email and phone number, and go on to the next page. Be aware that without entering your first name and last name, your PCN number, your state of practice, your email, and your phone number, you will not be able to register, to complete the registration. Now, you will also need a passport, okay? Don't bother about uploading your capitation receipt, right? The CPC at this time has built in a back-end process that helps to confirm all of that. All this process for registration will not take more than 3 to 5 minutes. So please ensure that you start and get registered. Just to show you, currently, only 3.7% of us here have registered. So please register after this webinar. Thank you. Secondly, the PSN Tower project is still ongoing. Please, I'm sure you've seen your emails and a roadshow, a notification about a roadshow happening online. Please, when you see the next email, ensure you will register to attend. It's one of the big things happening in pharmacy. Please get on board. Secondly, or thirdly rather, the Medicine Information Center is still running. It's your one-point access for medicine information. If you want to, also some of these processes around referral for patients to COVID-19 centers, you can get information from the MIC at the PSN. The MIC at the PSN is also consistently releasing patient information leaflets that you can use in counseling patients. Ensure that you get in touch with them within the week. These announcements were brought to you by the PSN Publicity and Enlightenment Subcommittee. Now we will go on to our panelist session, and we will be starting with the distinguished president of the PSN, Mazi Sam Ohuabunwa. You're welcome, sir.
I believe that our guest speaker did a great job. In fact, I was thoroughly enthused with when she identified the responsibility of pharmacists. I'm not sure that even pharmacists can fully identify those roles if they were asked to give those roles. She did a great job. I know I can understand why she would do so, because she has a relationship with pharmacy from grapevines. So thank you, Madam, for a wonderful speech. and which was delivered very professionally. And thank God for keeping you. I was surprised to hear you on the road from Katsina to Cape this today. So people are moving, and God will protect you in Jesus' name. I believe that the critical thing here, as they say, is just not in hearing, but also in doing. So very often people hear what they need to do, and people just take it that it will be done. My emphasis will be in drawing up a proper, she talked about scheduled cleaning, scheduled disinfection, scheduled decontamination, and all that. That's usually what does not happen easily in institutions, because somebody knows what to do, but because it's not scheduled, there are distractions. We're busy doing our work every day. We're doing our work every day, and that can consume us. I walk into a couple of pharmacies and I see how busy the pharmacists are, and they work till late and they go tired and exhausted, especially the pharmacists on the floor, you know. And I wonder if there's a proper scheduling of these activities. I think that's what every, not only pretending pharmacist, but every pharmacist who is in any bit, you must be sure there's a schedule, not we will do it, not that it is okay to be done, or we're trying to, you know, those kind of things you hear from government. We are planning to, we are looking into it. Those things don't work. What works is sit down and do a schedule and paste it somewhere and have somebody supervise that this is done and tick on. That's what we do in pharmacy, in the industry. There's a standard operating procedure for every activity. And the moment that activity is done, somebody else, not the person who does it, ticks that it's done, the supervisor validates it. And therefore that is said to have been done. Otherwise, it will never be done. Human beings are lazy. They fall back to their comfort zones, you know, and they assume all is well. So please, that is an area I want to focus on, because I'm not like Donald Trump, who thinks that one life does not matter. One life matters. One life is so important to me. And one life of a pharmacist is critical. It's okay to send condolence messages. It's okay to collect money, but that's not it. If it's preventable, let's prevent it. That is why I think some people who feel they are familiar with these issues, or who make who believe you know, it's not a serious matter, may be risking lives of many people. Because the bad thing about COVID is not just you know, something that happens by your deliberate behavior, like sexually transmitted illness or disease, which comes from your own direct decision. But this is, you're innocently moving around, doing your work in the pharmacy. You know, somebody just runs into your pharmacy, and before you know it, has infected you if you are not properly protected, or infected other people in the pharmacy. So I have walked into pharmacies myself, especially community pharmacies. I went to one yesterday, and I had to stand. So they say, come near. I said, I'm not coming here. It's not up. The person in front of me, the distance is not up to 6 feet. You know, yet the pharmacists and the pharmacy technicians were all sitting down. They are plotted around by people, even though they may be wearing masks. Mask is one, but maintaining some physical distance is also important. I think somebody must be a champion in our practice settings, either in the hospital, in the community, in the industry, even in academia, wherever we are. There must be somebody in an institution charged with enforcing these protocols. If you don't enforce them, they will not be done, or they'll be done in breaches. I have seen this happen several times. People make laws, make rules, make all the beautiful designs, and yet nothing is going on, because, you know, it's fulfilling all righteousness, and we just keep assuming it is okay, it's fine. I know God will protect us, but heaven helps those who help themselves. So we need to help ourselves and ensure that we become effective protect ourselves effectively and our customers. The other point, which I think I need to emphasize that she made, is that the issue of our being information warehouse. We have information because we interact with citizens who really need help, and they trust pharmacists to give them information. So I have, in our early advisory, we recommended printing of flyers or certain things like that, or ensuring that immediately any patient comes into your shop, or a client or a patient, make sure the patient does not leave without some little information passed to him or her. I go to pharmacists, I don't get that done. I mean, and many of them don't even know when I'm a pharmacist. Everybody's just focusing on listening to my problem and selling medicine to me, or filling my prescription. I think we need to get serious with making sure that this pharmaceutical care we speak about is not a story. It's not just writing it, we do pharmaceutical care. This is the time to do pharmaceutical care, if ever did it. People come to your shop, they ask for medicine. What you want this medicine for? What are you using it for? What is the dosage you're taking? When did you start? And recommend to them how are they dealing with this COVID thing. Somebody should be always go out with some information from the pharmacy about, and it should be information we should volunteer, not when they ask. It's then we are really doing this job, because there are two sides to this job. There's the pecuniary side, there's the responsibility side. As healthcare professionals, we need to join hands to make sure we cut the spread of the disease. And it will not happen by waiting for the other guy to do it. We have a job to do, and we must do our own job and do it well. Those are the two areas I think I needed to emphasize from her wonderful presentation. Thank you, Tosin.
Very much, sir. Now we will go on to pharmacist Mashood Oluko. One of our panelists is the Director, Food and Drugs, the Federal Ministry of Health. You're welcome, sir.
Good evening. The President, Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria.
Good evening, my chair, my director.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Other members of the panel, good evening. And I want to also say big welcome and thank you to the keynote address giver. Well, it is a very important issue, and I want to commend the organizer of the society that we have brought up this type of idea. The essential thing in COVID-19 management, as of today, we all know there's no drug, no treatment regimen. And if there is even treatment regimen, we should not be infected. It's better. So the most appropriate thing is IPC, infection prevention and control. If people look at it on the surface, they say, what are pharmacists doing? As the president has emphasized, pharmacists are really important. There's no healthcare system without the pharmacist. If it is in the hospital, we bear the brunt. When the patients have gone around, it's exhausted, it gets to the pharmacist to be attended to. And by the nature of our practice, as emphasized by the keynote address giver, we come into close contact with our clients. So it is very, very, very important that we take the issue of IPC very serious, be it at the hospital level. All government hospitals are provided with PPEs, the basic ones. You don't need the overall gown in the pharmacy, but you need the mask. The patient must also wear his own mask. So if he's not wearing, you cannot drive him away. It is our duty to also ensure that we treat him or her, or attend to him or her. In that case, we make a provision to provide a mask, which the patient will use. And it has been emphasized the issue of hand washing, using of hand sanitizers. Another trend that is emerging that we have noticed at the Federal Ministry of Health is the use of face shield without the mask. This is not protective. So please, if you must use the face sheet, it's beautiful, it's glamorous, you still need to use the face mask. And so also you must educate, as the president said, we need to educate the patient as they come in on the need for them not to rely only on the face sheet, that the face mask is the real thing. Again, we've got to ensure that our staff in the pharmacy, whether in the private or even in the hospital pharmacy, or even in the industry. This evening, a cousin of mine came in. I stay at Lugbe end in a small estate. He came in from the Yanya end. He was wearing his mask. I was in the sitting room with my wife, immediately without mask. Immediately he came and asked my boy with me, go and bring me one mask in the something. Do not say they are your staff, you are together. You have all come from various angles of the city, transfer. Some of them are taking 3 or 4 buses before getting to you. You might have come in your car. They don't have that privilege. So you need also to protect yourself from them. They must also use face masks. That is one in terms of IPC. The next thing is the issue of being resourceful. I came back from Calabar some days ago, and I was glad when the CMD told us that once the COVID-19 pandemic started, they have started producing antiseptic lotion in the hospital, methylated spirit in the hospital, and sanitizer in the hospital. They were not doing that before. And I'm glad to see the efforts of pharmacists all over the countries that have produced this thing. So we need to go back to our learning and do these simple things within our hospital. We don't need to buy it. We can get the raw material, though they are becoming scarce. But by the time you produce on your own, it could be cheaper than buying the finished product. So we need to, again, by doing that, we are telling the management of the hospital that you need us, you cannot do without us. Then the issue of referral, especially for community practice, people in community practice, it is very, very, very essential. I was speaking with a professor some days ago, and he was virtually disputing the issue of the existence of COVID-19, saying that it is malaria we are treating. That before you can say you are treating COVID-19, you must first eliminate malaria. So it's very important. And if you look at the symptoms enumerated by the keynote address giver, they are essentially the same thing with what you get when you have malaria. So we must be very, very, very careful to ensure that that we refer at the appropriate time. If you have treated someone for malaria, or if he came back, if you come to you in the community practice and tell you that, sorry, I had malaria, I was having fever, and I used this, and it's coming back, please educate that person, encourage him or her to move to the next sample collection center to have his or her sample collected for testing. Is very, very essential. We have to be careful. If you go through the data, which we do virtually, used to be every day in the ministry, now we do 3 times a week, what we call situation room report. The community spread of the disease is higher. Now we don't know, it's not something that someone has traveled to America, he has just come back from UK. No, it's within the community. So it's everywhere. We need to protect ourselves. We need to protect the society, and we need to ensure, join hands with government and other stakeholders to, as much as possible, contain the spread of the disease. So essentially, this is what I have to say. The ministries have been supplying PPEs to our teaching hospitals and treatment centers across the country. In the next, we've done about 2 or 3 rounds of supply. In the next week, we are doing another round to all the centers. So to ensure that these things are available. We have supplies, a lot of them are coming in, and as they are coming in, we are distributing. So efforts are to make sure that everybody is protected. But as the president also said, everyone only help those who help themselves. We cannot, please, we do not have the luxury to be negligent. The consequence is just unimaginable. One person, it is in Nigeria, they say about 2 people died. I don't know whether there's half person. one person, one life is so important. It's sad to hear someone die in the course of his job. And it's very, very important for us to protect ourselves. So thank you. As we go ahead, if there's another question for me, I will answer.
Thank you very much, sir. We deeply appreciate you. Thank you. Now we are going on to the next panelist, our chairman of ACPN, Pharmacist Sam Adekola, FPSN. You're welcome, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Let me correct you quick. I am yet FPSN. So I am still Merit Award winner, Distinguished Service Award winner. So not yet FPSN, maybe in another time. So to the glory of God, I must say that I want to appreciate you and your team for putting this together. And I thank most sincerely the president of the Pharmaceutical Institute of Nigeria and all our panelists, the chairman, the director of Food and Drugs, the DPS from the Center of Excellence, Mama there. And I also appreciate my colleague, the chairman of Happening. I thank everyone, every colleagues who are listening to us at a very important moment like this. And I also want to join the president and the last speaker to appreciate so much the keynote address speaker. She's done a good job. And of course, we know that just like Peter in the Bible, one of his epistles, he said, we cannot but remind you those things that we know are expedient to you, though you know this thing before us. Yeah, I mean, that's just what we are doing right now, and what she has done in a nutshell. If you recall, in one of the advisory we sent out under the authority of the president, at his instruction, that I sent out to all community pharmacy, all of this instruction and many more, they are captured in the advisory. And we continue to remind ourselves these things, but I think the critical part of it is this reminding us, though we know them. And that's why I also believe that there cannot be anything better than what we're doing to remind ourselves on some of these things, because it is real. And now more than before, our colleagues in the community has always been the people, the groups that bear the brunt more. You see, virtually, I mean, all the things that, I mean, the functions and works schedule that were being displayed by the professor, I mean, by the doctor, are things that we do in the community, and we can't run away from it. That is what community pharmacy is all about, world over. In fact, it's going to get bigger from the new visions of the CPS FIP, which will be launched later in the year. More responsibilities are being put on the table of community pharmacists, because unfortunately, our case is still very pathetic here in Nigeria. In some of these other climes where, apart from, I'm happy that the WHO person is saying this, because that has been their message. Sincerely yours, this is the message from the WHO. But unfortunately, I'm happy the director of pharmacy is also here, and the consultant to NCDC is also here. It is quite unfortunate that the community pharmacy in Nigeria continue to suffer. Now you heard that government provide PPEs to hospitals, to our colleagues in the hospitals. They get face masks, they get gloves, they get all of these things. But We are the one that buy them ourselves. We buy these things ourselves and to protect ourselves and to protect the community. And nobody seems to care about it. All of these infrastructures are things that community pharmacies, out of our hard-earned money, we have to provide. Yes, we have to provide it because it's life that is lost is worth the anything. That is correct. But we must not forget the fact that even in other climes where community pharmacies are receiving support more than necessary, that are supplementing so much some of these effort, some of these spendings that are directly on our own laps and can be burdened to us. So this is another message I cannot but put on the table. In advocacy, in all our advocacy, I think there's a need to put community pharmacy at the forefront of this bronze because we take 70% of this patient. 70% of it is not something that is not something we can joke. They are documentary evidences. These are records that even the Federal Ministry of Health has. 70% of patients in Nigeria will visit the community pharmacy. Some 70%. And the meaning of that is that it is only those that are bad, those that are not could not be contained, that eventually end up in hospitals. And that's it. So it's not a fault. It is what we have been created to be. And by the reason of our default accessibility, this is why it is so. And we must sing this song. Government must recognize this. Right now, it's become very difficult for us to even stock our pharmacy because the prices of products have gone up. Somebody that is using 5 million naira to run his pharmacy before comfortably, today will need as much as 8 to 9 million naira to run the same pharmacy. That is all we're saying. And as we speak, nobody is ready to listen to us. Only on the 100 billion naira of the federal government that was supposed to be for the care support to the industries. As we speak today, I have not seen one community pharmacy that have accessed it. When this thing came up, when this provision came up and the announcement came up, we saw it that the idea of asking people to come up with collaterals to procure this loan is a serious issue for community pharmacies. How many community pharmacies have his own landed property? Either his house or his premises that can be used to procure this loan, which was why we wrote a letter, a passionate appeal to CBN to see the possibility of looking at us and allowing our license and our certificate perhaps to be enough to guarantee low 10 million naira. Only last week, I got a letter from the CBN to say, sorry, appreciate your concern, but because the risk of this loan is purely bear by the financial institution, your bank, that is why we cannot give any discretion. Therefore, you must go ahead to negotiate with your banks. So we are in the mercy of going to bank to negotiate. So critically speaking, I want to say that we know all of this and we will continue to encourage our members, but we must try to see how we can drive tractions, drive support through advocacy at whatever level for community pharmacy. That is the window, that is the mirror of pharmacy, not only in Nigeria, everywhere in the world. When you talk about pharmacy, you talk about community pharmacy. We are the people at the forefront. We are the people that see this patient first. It is after, that you, I even know that somebody who's been treated for COVID, patient that has been treated for COVID in an hospital, will not get to, or we suspected to have COVID, will not get to community pharmacy, up to pharmacy to receive drugs. He will have to be quarantined, he will have to be put on before they are going to, before they go to meet them. It is only for those cases that are not suspected. But here, every shade of the patient comes to us, and we must continue to attend. We cannot discriminate, and that is the truth. We don't even have the window to do that. So I would just want to curate the judges of everyone that matters. I know so many great people on this platform. The need for us to advocate. Community pharmacy are regarded as primary health care centers in in other clients. But here in Nigeria, it is not true. It is not seen. And every cry we made to this effect are not acting, are not listened to. So I want to passionately appeal to everyone to please help us. We will continue. I believe that by the end of this webinar, we'll be able to get the lecture again, the slide from the keynote speakers. We can also forward this to all our members so that to remind them, like I said, there are things we know, but we must be reminded because they are very expedient to us, they are very useful and necessary to our life. Today, I'm telling you, we're living in fear, even as an individual. Each time I go to the pharmacy, I am in fear. I am in fear. And that is what it is. Not even only because of these people, but even your family. You go back, you retire back home to our families. And so because you must save lives, you must, okay, you want to make ends meet. Now you go back home and take this, you don't know. It's unknowingly take something back home. So this is the issue. And I want to plead to the leadership of PSN, to everybody that matters here, that let us cry out for community, to save community pharmacy, because the truth about it is that if community pharmacy, perhaps for whatever reasons, gets so much affected by what is happening right now, and we go into an institution, to all you cares, the truth about it is that pharmacy is gone. That's the truth. And that is why everybody must join now. You are in the hospital, you are in the industry, you are anywhere, any part of this profession. Let us sing the song of community pharmacy, not because of anybody, but because of what the reality it is, that community pharmacy represent what pharmacy represent in the world over. And that is the message. I want to thank you for the opportunity. And I want to say that by the grace of God, we pray that we'll continue to enjoy the mercies of God at a time like this. As we continue to protect the people, we also are protected by God. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Very much, sir. That was the chair of ACPN. Thank you so much. That was a passionate charge. Thank you again. Now we will go on to have the next panelist, the chairman of AHAPN, Dr. Kingsley Amibo. You have the floor, sir.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Hello,
can you hear me? You can hear me.
Hear you.
You can hear me, right?
Yes,
hello?
Sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Mr. Distinguished panelists, the organizer of this program, and then participants, good evening. I count it a rare privilege to be part of this evening's webinar organized by the Jada of Pharmacists. I feel that the webinar is really very apt in view of current developments in the healthcare sector as regards the COVID-19 pandemic. As some of you may have heard, in the last couple of days, I have lost some of our members, the chief pharmacist at the Federal Teaching Hospital of Abakaliki, to complications from COVID-19. So I crave the indulgence of Mr. President and this August gathering to observe 1 minute silence in memory of our colleague, Pharmacist Kenneth Evede. May the soul of Pharmacist Kenneth Evede rest in perfect peace.
Amen.
Amen. Right. So my topic is the protecting pharmacists at the front line from the perspective of the pharmacist. It's introduction, role of my type or the perspective of hospital pharmacists. And I know I'm going so my outline is generally
We're having a bit of a challenge with Dr. Amibo's connection, but he'll be back shortly. Okay, while we wait for Dr. Amibo to reconnect, I want to crave the indulgence. Okay, so we will wait for Dr. Amibo, but while we wait for him, we will crave the indulgence of our Director of Pharmaceutical Services, Lagos State Ministry of Health, Dr. Moyosore Adejumo, to start her session now. You're welcome, ma.
Good evening, Tosi. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma.
Hello?
We can hear you, ma.
We can hear, okay. Good evening, Mr. President, Pharmacist Sam Ohabua. I want to also appreciate the keynote speaker, Dr. Adebola Olayinka, the distinguished panelists. Please permit me to stand on the existing protocol. As I've been introduced, I'm the Director of Pharmaceutical Services, Lagos State Ministry of Health, and presently the logistics pillar lead for the Emergency Operations Command of the COVID-19 response in Lagos State. May I quickly just bring us up to date on what has been happening in Lagos State? The response is operated through 10 pillars. The logistics pillar is one of them that is responsible for pre-positioning of medicines and other health commodities across all the service areas. The other pillars, if I may quickly add, the case management pillar, the surveillance and epidemiology pillar, the psychosocial pillar, risk communication pillars. 3 of those pillars have pharmacists at. In the case management pillar, we have 25 pharmacists, meaning those pharmacists that are working in the isolation centers. In the logistics that I had as pillar lead, there are 25 pharmacists across the 3 levels of care. The tertiary, the secondary, and the primary healthcare. Incidentally, 7 of our pharmacists today have been confirmed to have come down with COVID-19 in their responsibilities and discharge of their duties as frontline workers. 6 have been discharged and are back at work. 1 is presently on admit for public servants who come down. I try not to limit, I'm going to talk a bit about the role of the pharmacist as a member of the healthcare team. Let us remind ourselves that the pharmacist is a member of the healthcare team and the psychological and physical well-being
You're back online, ma.
Hello? Oh, thank you very much, Tosin. Yes, as I was just saying before I got cut off, the pharmacist is a member of the healthcare. While we advocate mental, physical of the pharmacists in the front line, pharmacists do not work in isolation. They are rubbing shoulders with the medical doctors, with the nurses, with attendants. Just the other day, just to tell us how real the COVID-19 disease is. As much as I've been very, very scrupulous in personal hygiene and taking the necessary precautions along with my domestic staff, it finally dawned on me that even my driver and my house help are frontline workers. And unfortunately, they were confirmed, both were confirmed positive 72 hours ago. And I started asking myself, where could we have gone wrong? Was there something we could have done better that we did not do? And the answer is no. In fact, I had more face masks being shared with my house help and other members of the household and my drivers than I did myself, just to ensure that he could understand the reason why. And so when the test came back positive, it was a big shock quickly, and as it is mandatory for persons who may have been exposed to persons who have tested positive. The other 5 members of my household had to submit themselves to testing. This would have been my second test. On Monday, luckily for us, the test results, sorry, that was Friday, the test results came back negative. Just for people out there who believe or are still skeptical that the COVID-19 disease is not real or it happens to somebody else, this is a good example, and I wanted to share this little piece with you. My driver and my house help. And the house help lives in the house with me. I mean, her bedroom is just a few doors away from ours. My driver comes and goes, and it's really unfortunate. So just a little bit to share with you for us to take those measures that some of us may think is extreme. Washing when I'm in the office with soap and water, hand sanitizer on my table. I have Lysol spray. I spray the tables, the chairs, the computers, the keyboard. I spray practically the corridor. You know, and people just, DPS, you're at it again. My driver, before he goes into the car, we spray the car, we lock it up for 5 minutes, and all those measures that we have taken, and still, it still came down. It just goes to show how virulent this disease is. So that's just a little bit to share with you. But quickly, what has Lagos State been doing? Just a few statistics. As of July 9th, the state has tested 46,537 tests. Out of those 46,537, we have 11,899, 891 came back positive. Those who have been discharged to the community, 7,450. The other panelists and the guest speaker and Mr. President have been talking about community transmission. Presently, we have about 2,000 in the community in Lagos who, for so many reasons, for refusal to be picked up, logistics issues, wrong information on their forms. Sometimes phones are switched off the minute the tests are done for those persons who most probably have a high level of suspicion that they will be confirmed. And so we have a lot of people in the community who are moving around. And so we need to be, I keep sounding the notes of warning because of my recent experience now. Aside from that, before now, close to 50 of the healthcare workers who we consider frontline and across all the professional groups, and attendants and drivers and stores officers and logistics officers who are not called professionals, close to 50 in Lagos State had actually come down with the COVID. But thank God we've had only one mortality. Hello? Hello?
You're back online.
Thank you. How many have been discharged? 1,799 out of statewide 182. People have been asking about the labs. How many laboratories do we have? We have 5 laboratories that are currently doing testing. The laboratory at Luth, NIMA, the Lagos State Biobank itself at Yaba, 54Gene is a private lab, and of course the NCDC Central Public Health Lab in Yaba. Lagos State is in the process of accreditation of 7 new labs, which the EOC is hoping will bring the number of tests or the testing capacity to 4,000 tests per day. How many isolation centers do we have? We have 10 that are functional and 1 that was donated by the Indian community that is yet to be commissioned. The bed capacity for those isolation centers, 843. Present occupation is about 56%. We have talked about it so many times. In the absence of a vaccine or cure, compliance with the IPC measures remains a responsibility of every one of us. And I love that hashtag from the PTF. It says, take responsibility. That is something we need to keep on reminding ourselves and persons that are close to us, people we come across. So in effect, we are also trainers in IPC measures by virtue of the positions that we occupy and the responsibilities and roles that have been foisted on us as members of the COVID response. How many people have asked about validation of test kits? There are no validated test kits in Lagos State officially, and that is from the position of government, although government is aware that there are some private facilities that are using the test kits. But from government's position in a pronouncement, there are no validated test kits. However, the research pillar, which is one of the 11 pillars I mentioned earlier on, is undergoing, is validating or testing to see whether that would help us to increase our testing capacity in addition to the PCR, that is a standard way of testing. A little bit about the logistics pillar that I heard earlier in the response. The logistics pillar was mandated to come up with a supply chain strategy, which it did, and it outlines the flow of commodities and information data, because we know that data is necessary for informed decision making. Presently, there are two main warehouses for the COVID response for warehousing of commodities: the Lagos State Medical Stores at Oshodi, which all of us are familiar with, and there's the Lekki warehouse. The Lekki warehouse is for donated items to, I want to say on behalf of the Lagos, appreciate Mr. N. Some for at the very to Lagos government, PPs, NCPs, and that those items have actually been distributed across all the service areas, and we appreciate you for that. We believe that, as Oliver Twist, don't ask what government can do for you, ask what you can do for government, and we're expecting more in that. Hello, Tosi, am I back on?
You're back on, ma.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, ma.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
the supply chain strategy has the logistics pillar. We have 4 sub-pillars under that strategy, warehousing and distribution sub-pillar. I think this is important for us to know, because we're talking about saying, this is the, hello, Tosin. My 10 minutes is up. Hello?
You can go on, ma.
Yes.
You can go on, ma.
The logistics pillar is also responsible for the management of 90 procured or donated individuals. Apart from those 4 focused areas, also across the 10 pillars. So when we go to our EOC meetings, before now the meetings were on a daily basis at the central lab, and then we moved to mainland, and when persons started coming down with the disease, part of our response and our solution in government was to move the meetings out of the immediate vicinity of the mainland hospital, and it holds in the secretariat and is now virtual. 2 meetings virtual, 2 meetings physical, to ensure that we ourselves practice what we are preaching. Tosin mentioned his programs in Lagos State. I wish us to know that the last the state government and a leader will be doubled 8 months. The next 000-267-662, that is 08000 Corona. If you look at align those the words, the letters with the numbers, you get 08000-267-662. Once again, I want to appreciate the opportunity. It's much more. Bit more about what it is doing. Alignment, of course, with the presidential task force. We're going into community care. There was a pronouncement by the presidential task force that certain local governments will be locked down. We are not too sure that that will be possible in Lagos, but we will continue to align with the presidential task force guidelines on no congregation, reducing movement from one point to another within the state. The testing capacity I did mention earlier on is also receiving a boost with the 20 LGAs, where there have been tents erected or buildings renovated, and to ensure that people can walk in and be tested. So you do not have to go to any of the 5 labs physically. The samples will be taken to the 5 labs that we presently have pending the accreditation of the 7 labs. The priority for the PTF and also for Lagos State is those 10 high burden local governments that we have talked about. Telemedicine features, a telemedicine portal is featuring strongly in capturing of data for Lagos State. I wish I could go on and on. There's so much to talk about. I'd love to speak a bit more about the logistics pillar, which I heard, and we are very much aware that in situations such as this and in public programs, health programs, the logistics component, the supply chain component, the PSM component account for 60 to 70% of the expenses, whether physical or financial, of any response. And the same applies to the COVID response here. We've seen an increased number of persons requiring oxygen. And one of the international partners is about to partner with the Lagos state government to come up with what we call oxygen kiosks. I don't think it's too premature of me to mention this because we've seen, if you go through the statistics, we all know mild cases account for 58%, moderate cases 35%, severe cases 5%, and critical cases 2%. But we've seen an increased need for oxygen therapy, and so the state government is prepositioning itself to be able to address the needs of those persons who fall within that 2% category. Once again, I want to appreciate the opportunity that I've been given to be able to say a word or two, remind ourselves for our community pharmacists who are very, very much part and parcel of healthcare delivery in Lagos State, even before the COVID response in the area of malaria, in the area of TB, HIV, AIDS, and now COVID, because there are 1 or 2 plans in place. I was just discussing with the PSN chairman for Lagos State, and there's a plan for better engagement with state government on the COVID response. Let's ensure we have our glass panels, we have our floor markings to ensure physical distancing, using our face masks, wash hand basins with running water and soap, PPEs, disinfection of our surfaces in the hospital, and remind ourselves what are the COVID symptoms: sore throat, cough, fever, loss of taste and smell. And one other thing I would love to mention, because a lot of my colleagues, a lot of our community pharmacists have been trained on how to use RDTs, rapid test diagnostic test kits for malaria. It is not out of place for us when patients present to pharmacies to actually run the RDTs, because you do find that it is not every fever that comes into your pharmacy that is auto. Yes, we need to maintain a high level of suspicion, but at the same time, it could just be malaria. I want to encourage the community pharmacists, please do not stop using the RDTs for patients who present with malaria. We do not want those skills to be wasted. There was so much that was invested by yourselves as community pharmacists and by the partners who funded the training to ensure that capacity was built in the use of RDTs. Please do not let those skills go to waste while you are going to refer the patient after conducting the malaria test. That it's still important. That patient may also need to be put on plain old antimalarials. And I'm not talking of malarials in terms of COVID response and the hydroxychloroquine or the chloroquine, just a good old ACTs for those that have malaria, while referral is made to a COVID testing center. I need to appreciate Mr. President for this opportunity. Tosin Adeyemi, thank you very much. My Director of Food and Drug Services, thank you very much. The Chairman of HAPNI and ACPN, my colleague, the DPS Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. I hope I've not left anybody out. And our audience, really, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm available, my doors are open, and thank you once again, and I wish us all the best. God bless you.
Amen. Thanks so very much, Ma. Without further ado,
thank you, Tosin.
You're welcome, Ma. Without further ado, we will now invite the Chairman, Lagos PSN, Pharmacist Iyola Gbolagade.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Sir.
Mr. President, Mrs. Mazi Samu Hambua, our dear President, the panelists, and my dear senior sister that just finished now, the DPS Lagos, my senior brother, Mrs. Mashud Lawa, the Director of Food and Drugs, Federal Ministry of Health. I want to really appreciate the organizers of this webinar. It's a job well done, and I want to thank Mr. President for the privilege to be sharing with us our experience in Lagos as PSN. Let me say that at the beginning of the pandemic, at our secretariat, we undertook a desk review. We look at different safety protocols available from FIP, from National Secretariat of PSN as released by President. And then we marry it with protocols from WHO, and we have taken it home to NCDC. And so many other from different areas in diaspora that are authorities on infectious diseases. In our own opinion, there was no superior argument at that time. And the general idea was to perform hand hygiene, that is hand washing, which I believe that was first initiated by ACPN National around 2012, 2013 as by Mrs. Lawa at DIC then. I remember I was part of that committee where we took the message of hand washing to schools, especially primary school all over Lagos as at that time. As events unfolded, there were additional requirements for wearing face masks, disposable hand gloves in some setting. But let me come home and say that and bring this discourse through, toward the dimension of how we have tried as PSN Lagos to work closely with Lagos State Ministry of Health. We have supported the policies and dissemination of information on COVID-19 pandemic through our members who are employees, including the top notch in the directorate, like our dear DPS. PSN Lagos has been part of the incident command, which is a show of strong relationship with the government of Lagos. I see it as a favor from Mr. Governor, because we could have been excluded. There's nothing we will do about it. We will only go to the media and make a noise about it. But there was no need for us to do that. And in the course of that, we have had so many things that have been coming out in the front line, in isolation center, and we have run out and put out media memo in so many of the media. We have advised governments at such fora on community education and behavioral change, which is actually the most important in managing this pandemic. Actually, we want to say here that we are very glad to see that government has adopted most of those suggestions, and the government has been responding favorably well to so many of our advocacies in areas where we feel there are gaps, such as in staff welfare. Also, in respect of our continued engagement and partnership with government, we were able to continue to hold engagement with my dear senior sister, Pharmacist Dr. Muyosori Adejuma, the Director of Pharmaceutical Services in Lagos State. At the community level, we realized that at the beginning of the lockdown, people were suffering so much. In a bid to ease the suffering, many of our colleagues, especially, I want to state it here that the YPG Lagos, they went into the community to provide services to close up the gaps that was occasioned by the lockdown. And as well as during as the lockdown is being relaxed in phases, our members have shared updates, including distribution of hand sanitizers to indigent persons, public and traders in open marketplaces. This was actually carried out by YPG and these CPM members in Lagos State. Distribution of relief materials, sanitary wares and other hygiene products, community education, and training on prevention and infection prevention and control procedure as defined by NCDC. Actually, our colleagues are making community interventions in containing drug and substance abuse that was very, very rampant before the advent of the pandemic, which actually has gone to the cooler now. During the lockdown, our members provided mental health support for most of those patients. What are we going to say about so many of the chronically ill patients that were turned down from facilities? They were turned back. They have no other place to resort to except community pharmacies in Lagos. Pharmaceutical care and chronic disease clinics were actually held for patients who are unable to access hospitals, especially at the height of the lockdown. Actually, in Lagos State, more than 2 million adults have chronic illnesses, and this is an important risk segment in the population. We have done screening for different malaria, different diseases like HIV, TB in the course of the COVID-19, and follow up for patients suspected to have COVID-19 virus. These and many more actually are the services that we have provided in Lagos State, and we are actually continuing to do that. This is because we want to close gap for millions of patients and teeming public in Lagos State. Just like the DPS mentioned, we are waiting for, we want to partner with the government for community intervention as the community spread is really raging now. I believe that in the course of this discourse, we still have to come out to say one or two other things again. But meanwhile, I want to thank the organizers of this program for giving me the opportunity to lend my voice to what we have done in Lagos. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tosin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now we quickly will invite the FCT chairman of PSN, Pharmacist Jelili Kilani. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, the editor-in-chief. I want to thank the PSN president, Omazi Mohabua, for letting this forum happen. I also want to thank all the other senior colleagues in the House, the Director of Food and Drugs, and also most especially the keynote speaker, Professor Adebola Olayinka, who has really done great justice to this. I also want to greet my national chairman of AHAP and also the national chairman of ACPN. I just want to focus on the aspect of IPC protocols considered adequate for pharmacists in different practice settings. We have to understand that what we call standard precautions is a set of practices that are applied to the care of patients, regardless of the state of infection and in any place where health services are provided. So we know that pharmacists work majorly in the community setting and in the hospital setting. That is when with relation to this issue of COVID-19. It is important to know that PPEs or precautions should be based on the kind of what we're trying to prevent from happening. That is it a contact precaution? Is it the droplet precaution or airborne precaution? We know that initially we're told that COVID was being transmitted via the droplets at close distance. But later on, by now, we now know that it's also transmitted via the airborne medium. We also, to know whether our PPE is adequate, we look at the risk evaluation. What kind of interaction do we have with the patient? And what are the modes of transmission of the disease? And then what is the amount of body fluid that will be generated? One thing we have to know is that we need to wear our medical mask whenever we are within 1 meter range of the patient. You know, so it's been said before, some patients, they even want to come closer to you. So whether we are wearing the face mask or not, we should try to maintain the distance. And we also have to not stigmatize the patient. However, I think just let me say that it is important that we wear our face mask and face shield because we don't know where are the condition of those who are coming in. There are asymptomatic patients and there are those who are pre-symptomatic and they can actually be infectious. However, we need to know what we call the 5 moments in hand hygiene. And the first is you do your hand hygiene before contact with the patient. Secondly, before you undergo any procedure. Then after doing the procedure, then after exposure, and then when there's contact with the patient's surroundings. So these are some of the things we need to remember. Now, who provides the PPEs? It's been mentioned that, well, in the government hospitals, it's the government that does that. But are they adequate or not? Many times the pharmacists in the hospital setting, they always have to fight to get their own PPEs. So it also depends on the quality of pressure that the HOD of such institutions put. However, being the chairman of PSN in Abuja, so we tried to make sure that everybody is carried along, both the pharmacists in the public setting, that is in the institutions, and also the pharmacists in the community setting. We carry our advocacy to the community. Actually, we set up a COVID response committee about 2 months ago when we found that we also need to do something as pharmacists, as a responsible society. We were able to take our advocacy to the community setting. We were able to donate PPEs, hand sanitizer, and the rest, and then we educated the community. Actually, we went to the rural setting in Abuja. We started with Mpape, and we are also going to go to other settings. And even though we will have met with the Minister of FCT since June, but it was just last Thursday, 9th of July, that he gave us audience, and we also went there to actually let him know what we have been doing, how we have been doing our outreaches to the communities to sensitize them about the issue of the COVID, and he really appreciated our effort so well, and he also promised us so many other things, and we told him that our doors are open for collaboration. Also, we in our presentation to him, we also advocated that incentives should be given to the community pharmacists, because most of them are exposed to the patients. To COVID. Many times, people who just come to the pharmacies, they may not actually present with symptoms. And so we impressed it upon him that it is even the community pharmacists or people who just attend to patients who are non-COVID that are even at risk. That if, in fact, health workers that are working at the isolation centers or treatment centers, they already know what they are battling with, that they are treating or dealing with confirmed cases. But those who are not confirmed, who do not even come with COVID, they may actually be harboring COVID. And so he understood with us that all health workers who are working in the hospital setting and also in the community setting actually have to be given incentives. So we advocated that there should be a kind of like tax waivers for the pharmacists in the community setting, and also there should be access to loans that can help these people in the community pharmacy setting. And also, we complained about the issue of this multiple taxation that is so rampant in the FCT, and he promised that there will be harmonization so that not many agencies will be going to the community pharmacies to be disturbing them. Also, we had some challenge in the area of what FCCPC is trying to do to intimidate some of our pharmacies in Abuja. FCCPC is a Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Council or Commission. In June, about 3 or so of our pharmacists were actually taken to court that the inflated prices of consumables, hand sanitizer and PPEs. And we found that this is not right. So we actually set up a high-power delegation to the DG of the SCPC. And I'm sure that he even told us that he had an interaction with the national chairman of ACPN, and he said that he's not so happy that the pharmacists were combative, this and that. We said we are not combative, but because of the way he has taken this thing, that is like trying to intimidate us and trying to like influence us negatively. So, and we also went to the registrar of PCN, who said he is also ready to join in the litigation if the FCCPC still wants to continue. So these are some of the things we are actually battling with in FCT. But by and large, we can say that pharmacists are actually trying their best to make sure that we prevent the spread of this disease by protecting ourselves and also protecting the patients. What I also noticed of recent is that because people are trying to get used to this disease, it's like people are like letting down the guards. They are like relaxing as if things are getting normal. Things for now are not normal. And so we need to know that we have to continue to protect ourselves and we'll do all the hand hygiene, the cough ethics, everything, maintaining the social distance. We need to imbibe it and also make sure that the community where we work also imbibe this. So this will go a long way to help to protect our practice and also save the patient. And lastly, on the issue of compensation and incentives, like for the hospital pharmacists. So we actually have been trying that, trying very well on that, that whatever other health workers are getting, we also get. And I think sometime in April this year, even the PSN President Mazi actually asked us to represent him in one of the meetings with the Minister of Labor that sought to the MOU regarding the COVID incentive allowance. So I think it's the pharmacists in the hospital setting, they are getting what others are getting. But what we are pushing for now is for our pharmacists in the community pharmacy to also be carried along and to let the government appreciate the efforts and then actually incentivise them appropriately. I want to thank you, Dr. Tosin, for this platform.
Very much, sir. We appreciate you. Thank you for your contributions. We want to appreciate all of our panelists. Unfortunately, we thought we were going to be able to take questions from panelists, but unfortunately, we've overstayed our scheduled time. But we do promise you that we will make these webinars more, more frequent to take the pulse of what is happening around the society. We're glad to see a lot of interaction in the comment section, the questions, all of that has really, really proven to us that this is really important and we will continue to engage in this way. So thank you very much. You will see there's a question that has come up on your screen. Do well to answer that poll and let's gauge our pulse again. Just 2 minutes, and then we'll share the results. All right, thank you very much. So as much as we can see here, most people are adherent to the wearing of face masks. We do hope that we're able to maintain this in practice, and we will definitely be coming to you again soon. Finally, just to remind us again, the PSN Conference 2020, Omoluabi 2020, is coming up in 99 days. There is a physical part of the conference and there is a virtual part of the conference. Please go online to register now. Late registration will also likely apply to online registration if you do not register early. So please go online, www.psn.org. psnnational.org. Please go online to register immediately. For last words, I want to call on our PSN president. Like I want to say again, I sincerely apologize that we're having to shut down this the webinar at this time. It is because of time. Please forgive us. But definitely we will come to you again very soon. So please expect a link to these videos in your email and of course in your WhatsApp groups. And then also expect our invitation for subsequent webinars. Thank you very much. I will now hand over the floor to the PSN president for closing remarks. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, hello. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
All right, thank you so much. I think I want to say that we've done well for this first event, and I want to thank God for how far He has led us, and all the contributions are very robust. I'm just hoping that you now go to work to put them together and make sure we get. Make sure we able to have some plan of action so that we can see what came out from this meeting and then how to take it forward. You know, a kind of a communique from this meeting, and then perhaps assign rules. If there are things that government has to do or PSN has to do or ACPN, Lagos State, whatever. Let's see if we can, if there's any rules or what we can do together. And then also if there are timelines to see that they are done, that will be helpful so that we can have some measurable a pattern to these discussions and this engagement. But I like to tell you that I have probably enjoyed the contribution of these leaders of our profession, both in practice and in regulation and in policy. It's been very robust. And I pray that we'll have more opportunities to deal with this kind of issues that are central to our profession and to the maintenance of professional excellence, which PSN stands for. Thank you, Tosin, and thank you all the panelists and all the participants. God bless you.
God bless you, sir.
God bless you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
my
so
sister.
very much.
Thank you.
With that, we say have a blessed week and God bless you. God bless the PSN.
God bless all of
much,
us.
man. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Madi BS.
Bye.
BFBS.
I miss you, Mama BS.
Thank you, sir.